Hello and welcome to Forged from Iron. Little bit of housekeeping as I always get out of the way. Please don't forget to like, comment on and share this stream to your social media platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already and hit the bell icon for alerts on new content. As always, we thank you very much indeed for your support. Speaking of support, ladies and gentlemen, please consider giving your support to the Iron Supporting Food Bank charity. This is the page you can see on my, well, it's to my right, I guess. The Iron Supporting Food Bank is a charity that operates in the Newham Borough area, trying to put food on the plates of families in the Newham Borough area that are struggling to do so. So please consider putting a few quid in this particular charity. You can find this Just Giving link in the description section. No donation is too small. Give generously. And as always, we thank you very much indeed for your support. We are here for the next installment of Matty Rushmore. And I am very pleased to say I've got the one and only Gio from Hammer's Chat. How are you, sir?
I am good. I'm looking forward to it. It's always a little bit different being in the hot seat rather than pinging the questions. I quite enjoy it now and again, though. It makes a nice change. Very little preparation for me to do as well, which is always nice. Usually I've got to do the questions and set the streams up and blah, blah, blah. None of that for me. I come on, record, and I bugger off, and you have to do everything. So it's a nice change, actually. It's always like a night off.
Well, listen, you come in more often, mate. Get a few more nights off. It's fine. I don't mind. Right. Okay. So just to give yourself and the people watching this at home, the basic premise of this concept is the monument that exists in the United States of America called Mount Rushmore. It's a mountainside which has the heads of 4 United States presidents carved into the side of it. Gio, out of the kindness of my heart, I am going to give you your very own side of a mountain. And with a hammer and a chisel, you are going to diligently carve out the heads of 4 West Ham players that you want to put in there. Now, the caveat to it is, as always, it has to be a player that you have witnessed pull on the claret and blue shirt in your lifetime. But they could be anybody, and you can have them for whatever reason you like. It's entirely up to you. They don't have to be the best players. They might be someone that's maybe skill-wise a little bit down the pecking order, but someone that you had a particular affinity towards. So, Gio, are you ready for the challenge?
I am. Let's go.
Let's do it. So, who is the first name on the side of this mountain you wish to put?
Oh, you can take your pick. You've got my 4 names. You can pick any one you want, and I'll justify it. I'll try and explain my reasonings. I've got 1 or 2 easy ones, and I think I've got one that's like, yeah, get in. I think there's probably one that people are going to disagree with me a little bit, even though it's my opinion and my thing. I don't care. I'm going with it. I want him on it. So he's the curveball, if you like.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, if you want me to sort of name the first one, The first one is a gentleman that very recently retired from West Ham United. He wore the captain's armband with distinction for many, many years. Mr. Mark Noble. Gio, it's probably an obvious one to go for. As you said, there's an obvious 1 or 2 in there. This is probably one of them, I would suggest. But what are your reasons for having him there?
There you go. There's a massive clue there. He's my all-time favourite West Ham player. And I know he's not the best player, but I've never really been drawn to the best player in the team as my favourite player. I don't know why. It's just not really something. Even when Dimitri Payet was here, I still preferred a couple of other players in the team. Well, Noble being one of them, but there was still another couple as well in the team ahead of him that I preferred. So I don't know what it is. There's something about my brain that doesn't allow me to have the best player as my favourite player. But Mark's the first player I've been able to connect to when I was debatable, but when I understood football, he was the first player being able to cling to, and then obviously see his career out at West Ham as well, and he's just been an ever stay in the side. And he's lived out my dream, he's lived out your dream, playing for West Ham, captaining West Ham. The only thing he didn't do was lift silverware. Also, I'm not going to include the Betway Cup or anything in that. Those are prestigious trophies, but he's given everything to the club, and I think it's sort of like the obvious one for me. I think you'll have a few older people that do this. If Gonzo came on and did this, he would have a lot more players to select from, and he'd probably have more of the legends of the club. And in my era, my time as a West Ham fan, I think there's possibly only one or two you could argue is a legend at the club, and that's it, really. The rest are probably under the cult hero category. This is the one of the two players I think you could argue is a legend at West Ham, but in my eyes he is, and it's all about opinions and whatnot. So Mark Noble goes straight in just because he's my all-time favourite West Ham player, and it was a joy to watch him play, and I do think he was underrated as a player. I do think his passing, his range of passing was a lot better than people spoke about. And, even now, he's a couple of months into the season at time of recording. I'm not going to lie, I miss him. It's not normal seeing West Ham without him. Weirdly, I saw Declan Rice lead West Ham out most of last season. But this season, it feels weird watching Declan Rice lead West Ham out. But last season, it didn't. How does that work? I don't know. But it's different now. It's different.
Yeah, absolutely. What if I had to pin you down and say to you, Gio, name me the one moment that Mark Noble had in Claret and Blue that summed him up? What would be that one moment?
I referred to a couple of times. I'll always refer to this. It was in the early stages of the London Stadium. We'd only been there a year, 2 years at the most. So it was when we were really poor. And we were playing Chelsea, and I can't even remember the score. I don't even know if it was in the league. It might have been in the cup. We were playing Chelsea anyway, and our form it wasn't very good. And I think Hazard came off the bench. I think they were already winning. They brought him off the bench, and I think he'd started doing like step overs and stuff. And Mark Noble just went through him, slammed into him, a yellow card all day long. But he just got up and looked at Hazard and just said, listen, we're not the best team, you can beat us, but you ain't doing that, you're not doing tricks and stuff. That's taking the piss now. And I love that about him, because to me that is the West Ham I grew up with, that we weren't the best, but we played with our heart on our sleeve. We gave 100%. Now and again, we'd beat underdogs and scalp a big team, but we made it hard to play against. We were a hard team to play against. The London Stadium at this point was not home. We were getting slapped every week at that stadium as well, and I think it would have been difficult for Noble as the captain and as a West Ham fan. And we've heard Slaven Bilic briefly on that Iron Men film talking about how it's not really a football stadium, and that was before we'd even moved in. So it wasn't a particularly pleasant place to be playing football, but the fact that he still had that, you ain't taking the piss, I quite like that about him, actually. And it's always stood out for me because, I don't know, I think there's a line. Hazard went over and Mark Noble just reined him in quickly. And like I said, we can lose, but you ain't doing that.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, and I'm probably torn. It's probably joint level. It probably came in the same match from memory. Was the last game at the Boleyn, and there was the image of Mark Noble grabbing hold of Ander Herrera and dragging him carrying him to the sideline. I actually loved that. And then the speech he gave during the closing ceremony. I mean, you could see that the guy was breaking up inside, like we all were there that night. He felt exactly what every single one of us in that stadium, 35,000 or so, died in the wall West Ham fans. And he was out there with a microphone under his nose, and he was absolutely heartbroken. He was, like you say, he lived out our dreams over the course of his career of 18 years, and he did it with absolute distinction as far as I'm concerned. So, Gio, I commend you on your first choice. You have got your tools of the trade. You have chipped away diligently over a period of time, and there you've got the head of Mr. Mark Noble himself, Mr. West Ham. So, your second choice, you gave me was Mr. Scott Parker. Now, Scott Parker, again, I think this is possibly one of the easier ones.
Yeah, it's the when you asked me to do this, them two were the first two that came to me. Yeah. I was like, right, they're 100% in, and then it's like almost make a short list and whittle it down kind of time. But 3-time Hammer of the Year, one of the best players I've ever seen play for West Ham in my lifetime. Again, like Noble, gave 100% in every single game, and to win Player of the Year in a team that gets relegated, I could be wrong, but I don't think it's been done before, and I don't think it'll be done again, in all honesty. That's how special a player he was. And he was just at West Ham at the wrong time. We could have had Scott Parker 10 years before that, or even Scott Parker today. We would have got a much better team around him. But he was just, I don't know, a shining star in a storm, weren't he? It was horrible. The teams he played in were never particularly great, but he was just unbelievable. Got into the England team and whatever. Yeah. But like I said, 3-time Ham of the Year says all, really. There's only a handful of players that have done that at the club, Dixie being one of them as well. So, yeah, Scott Parker, one of the first picks for me, really. A bit of a no-brainer, I think. A tap-in. I've had 2 tap-ins. The next 2 are a little bit trickier, but I've had 2 tap-ins so far.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Parker, I think I know a lot of fans will be quite anti-Scott Parker, some of them, because he went to Tottenham and all the rest of it. Me, I'm the same as you. I thought he was absolutely magnificent in his time with us. Like you say, he won the Hammer of the Year 3 consecutive years. There's only ever been one player that has ever done that in the history of that award, and that was Trevor Brooking. He, as you say, he won the Football Writers Player of the Year in a team that got relegated. Interestingly enough, his most productive season in terms of goal scoring output was that season we got relegated. He got 5 goals in the Premier League, 7 goals in all competitions. I mean, he wasn't a goal scoring, but he just drove the team on. He was a very inspirational character, and do you know what? I'm going to say it now. If he came back at some point in the future as future West Ham manager, I would absolutely be behind that 100%.
Jury's out for me as him as a manager. I think
it's probably more my heart than my head, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if Moyes left today, I wouldn't want Parker as a manager.
No, maybe he needs a bit more experience, but I think if he came in, it's a bit like if Mark Noble came in as a West Ham manager. Yes, you'd probably say, has he got the experience, this, that, and the other? But if he knows the club and sort of like the fans have that relationship with the individual, possibly that might be a way that you could overcome any lack of experience. But yeah, I mean, Scott Parker, absolutely. Could you imagine a midfield, like you say, if we had Scott Parker, prime Scott Parker today? You imagine
he was just at West Ham at the wrong time, really, weren't he? He was in a team that was just not very good, and like you said, put him next to Declan Rice, and hello, look what you've got there. Yeah. But it's top player.
Absolutely. Well, the next one, I think you say top player. I think the next one was a top player until an incident that took place in the summer of 2006. Mr. Dean Ashton.
Yeah, it's a bit of a fanboy moment. I think I was just really pleased when we signed him, and I was sort of almost convinced he was going to be a huge success at West Ham. And I'm convinced today he would have been if it weren't for that injury. And 6 months he was here before the final. He scored in the final as well, and there's not many people consider scoring an FA Cup final for West Ham. Then he had that injury, like you said, that he'd come back and had a really solid season, but just never really fully recovered. And I think, like, this is obviously, I'm looking at him through sort of geo claret and blue specs, not just claret and blue specs, but geo specs as well, because I'm utterly convinced he would have been England's number 9 for quite a while as well, because we were seriously lacking a striker in around that period too. And I think he'd have went on to probably go to a bigger club as well, actually. I don't think he would have necessarily been at West Ham. I mean, even that summer before he got injured, he was being linked to moves away and stuff. He'd only been here 6 months. But I do think he was an outrageous talent on his day. Like a proper... I hate that tag, actually. When they say, oh, that's a proper such and such. Right, what's a non-proper version of it? But he was a proper striker, weren't he? He was just made for Premier League football as well, and he's just somebody I just really liked at West Ham. And again, I was sort of just at school when we had him. I was still at school when we had him, and surrounded by all the Man United fans and all that. And he was sort of my the player that I was like, he's good enough for your team eventually, but you're not going to get him. He's at West Ham. Then he got broken, but. Yeah, top player, and I think I'm being a bit biased because I've had the privilege to speak to him when I'm doing videos, and he's genuinely really, really nice. Like, he was meant to come on for about an hour, and he came on, and because I only had him for an hour, you break the ice with him, don't you? So I've got about like 5 minutes to break the ice and crack on because I need as much video content out of this as possible. So we did that. And I think at the start of the interview, I think he's a bit cagey. I think he's a bit like careful what I say. And then I think during it, he started to lighten up a little bit, and by the end of it, he's really comfortable. And then he stayed for about 45 minutes after it, just chatting, speaking about Norwich, speaking about West Ham, asking about what we do and stuff like that. Then he was talking about coming down to a West Ham game and coming to the boats with his kids. He was just dead nice, and you know. You always get, we're fortunate, you know, you've interviewed former players as well and stuff, and you always get a different opinion of them. You've got an opinion of them as a player, but then you get an opinion of them as a person as well. And I think with Dean, I was just very impressed by him as a person too, and it's probably clouded my judgment a little bit, but I don't care, you know. This is my choice, isn't Dean Ashton's one of them, because like I said, he stayed for ages and he's just such a nice person and took a genuine interest in what we do in West Ham and so on and so forth. And one of the biggest what ifs, I think, in West Ham's modern history, if you like. What if that didn't happen? You know, you've got Lanzini as well and stuff like that, but I think Dean Ashton's probably one of the biggest ones for me. What if he didn't have that injury? And I think the answer would be right to the top, actually.
I agree. I think that he had it all. I mean, he was strong. He had good pace about him. He could finish off both feet. He was good in the air. He was... If you could get Alan Shearer and Teddy Sheringham and sort of like mash them up, you would get Dean Ashton, in my opinion, because I think he had all the physical attributes of Alan Shearer, but he had the footballing intelligence of a Teddy Sheringham. It was, I don't want to say it was a footballing tragedy. Let me make, you know, that it wasn't a tragedy in terms of, you know, earthquakes and things like that, whatever. But in terms of footballing career and in terms of what he could have and should have gone on to achieve, what's happened in 2006 was absolutely awful. I mean, last training session before a friendly for England, the tackle from Sean Wright-Phillips, and yes, he came back, but he was never quite the same, and his career eventually had to come to its end as a result of it. But yeah, so Dean Ashton, I think is a very good choice there, Gio, if I may say so. So you've got 3 figureheads on the side of this mountain. So you've got Mark Noble, you've got Scott Parker, and now you've got Dean Ashton that's joined. You've got one choice left. Now think hard, young man. Who have you got next?
The surprise one, Jack Hollison. I don't really know how to say it, but I think it's just because everything about him, I'm almost picking him because of the man he is, and I think everything about him is just sheer class. On his day, don't get me wrong, on his day he was a wonderful footballer as well. Won Young Hammer of the Year, got into the team, gave his all for the club every time he played through the injury barrier, played against Millwall, you know, after his father had passed away. Yeah. He gave everything to this football club, and it's 2 important goals in the playoff semi-final against Cardiff as well. Yep. So he didn't contribute much in terms of appearances, but he contributed a lot in terms of memories. And players will always leave an impact on you. Not all of them, but certain players will leave, and they will leave an impression on you, and it'll be a different impression depending on what they've done. You know, Dimitri Payet is probably the best player I've ever seen play for West Ham. I have. I'll always remember that. I'll always remember Dimitri Payet for the goals, etc., etc. But Jack Hollison, especially because sort of I was a young, sort of growing into a young man at the time as well, and to see somebody like that as the person you look up to, I don't think you could have asked for a better person, really. It's almost like the role model at the club. Just like I said, utter class, family man, and now he's out in America doing it the hard way, trying to forge a career for himself in coaching. He's doing it. You know, he's not, with the greatest respect to him, he's not got a past like Lampard, Gerrard, Scott Parker, who Parker, to be fair, was at Tottenham as well. But they've not had to do much of an apprentice to get into a top job in the Premier League, whereas Hollison, he might not never get that, but he's trying to do it what I would consider the right way to some extent. He's going out there, he's earning his stripes, and I hope to see him one day in the Premier League. Even if it's just as a coach, I'd love him back at West Ham in some sort of capacity. But I just think that this guy, it's just another player just riddled with injuries, but whenever he was half fit, he was on the pitch giving it his all for West Ham. And I don't know, it's just somebody I can really relate to, actually. And, when he wrote his letter when he left West Ham, I mean, that was bloody lumping throat stuff reading that. You watched him come through the academy. He joined quite late, didn't he? He was like 15 or something when he joined the academy. But he emerged from the academy, then you see him and you had high hopes for him when you first saw him, as you do for any kid coming through. You've got high hopes they're going to go on and have a long career at the club, and it wasn't to be. But if he never got those injuries, he probably would have done. I think he was a solid Premier League player on his day, and playing various positions in midfield as well, and like I said, some important goals and occasions for the club. And he is a bit like James Collins, who wasn't a West Ham fan, but he left a West Ham fan.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one that you with Dean Ashton, what could have been as far as his career was concerned, but for injury. Same with Jack Hollison. I mean, he dislocated his knee up at the JJB in 2009. And again, yes, he made a comeback, but he was never quite the same player. But if I had to remember him for any particular moments in Claret and Blue, to be able to have the mental strength to play in a game against Millwall in a League Cup match when it's all kicking off, and it was, to do that 3 days after the death of your father, absolutely astonishing resolve from a guy. I think at the time he would have only been about 21, 22, something like that. Just ridiculous in terms of his mental strength, in my opinion. And then, as you say, the two goals that contributed to getting us to Wembley in the playoff final against Blackpool in 2012. Obviously, when we got to the Premier League, didn't quite happen for him, and he ended up going to, I think it was Wigan on loan and whatever. Yeah, it's another one that you sort of go, what if he hadn't have dislocated his kneecap that match in 2009?
I think the difference is Ashton would have went to the top. Had Ashton fulfilled his potential, I think he'd had greater things than West Ham. I think Hollison would have almost had a career like Martin Noble. I think we were probably his level. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's still a very successful career to be sort of like, for large parts of Noble's time with us, a bottom half Premier League team, and there's nothing wrong with being a midfielder that's quite consistent at a bottom half Premier League. You've had a very successful career, and I think sometimes as fans we focus on the flaws of players too much, and you almost forget that the guys that we watch week in, week out in the Premier League are in the top 0.1% of footballing talent on the globe. It's a very small amount of people that make it in the Premier League, and when you think about the large size of it. And Collison would have had a top career. He would have had a lengthy career with West Ham. He'd have made some of his own personal memories, just like Noble did, just like the likes of James Collins have. And there's nothing wrong with that. He'd have played plenty of times for Wales as well, and I think he would have had a comfortable career. But he would have left, a fan's favourite. And since he has left, he does loads of stuff. He's always commenting on West Ham, always supporting West Ham. I think he'll be back at the club at some capacity in the future as well. Like I said, I think he's doing it the hard way. I've got a lot of time for that, actually. A lot of respect too. So he's one of the players. When people leave, when some of the players leave, Gatesy, I'm not arsed with what they do. I'm like, yeah, you've gone somewhere, whatever. I won't check how they get on. Once they've left, that's it for me. But there is some that when they leave, I keep an eye on and I hope they do well. I'm rooting for them, and I become a fan of the person. Do you know what I mean? I'm a fan of West Ham first and foremost. But when Jack Hollison left, I was almost a fan of Jack Hollison. I wanted him to do well. I wanted him to succeed. And not many players do that to me, actually. So when they do, they've done it for a reason, whatever that is. And like I said, for Hollison, I think he's just utter class. So humble as well, actually. And I think with Ashton and Hollison, I think you could easily forgive them if they had a little bit of, I don't know what the word is, spitefulness about how their careers turned out, especially, Dean Ashton. We buggered up his treatment, and that's why I would completely forgive him if he had anger towards the club and the doctors that worked on his ankle and essentially ruined any chance he had of a comeback. And the same with Hollison, he's probably looking at talented players pissing it up the wall, the career the coach have, not really taking it serious, where he's doing everything he can just to play 10 games a season. I could understand if they had a little bit of something that looked at the game in a different way, but neither of them do, especially Hollison. He'll give anything back to football he can. He'll help anybody out as well. And I just think, as a man, complete class. You speak about the Moyes MOT test today, Hollison would pass it with flying colours.
Absolutely. Well, Gio, I thank you very much indeed for your diligence and your hard work with your hammer and your chisel. And look, the state of your hands. It must be in absolute blisters. They must be in absolute pieces. But have a look at that. Look Beautiful. At that. Absolutely.
Don't know why I chose that image for Dean Ashton. That's a lot of extra chiseling around the mouth I've done there, and all that wrinkles on his forehead.
That was, but to be fair, that was after he'd scored in an FA Cup final.
Yeah, that's true.
So it was worth the effort, wasn't it, Gio?
Yeah, go put that image back up. It's like the 4 stages of sex or something, isn't it? The facial expressions.
I'll have to put this out after 9 o'clock now. Cheers, mate. But Gio, I'd like to thank you very much indeed for your time in joining us on this particular venture. And have you enjoyed your time here?
Always. I wouldn't come back otherwise, would I?
There you go. I think that says it all. Well, this has been another episode of Matty Rushmore, episode 3, and Gio from Hammers Chat has carved away into the rock, and he's got Mark Noble, he's got Scott Parker, Dean Ashton, and Jack Hollison in his monument. And we would also like to encourage you guys to please consider giving to the Iron Supporting Food Bank charity. You will find the link to this particular Just Giving page in the description section. No donation is too small. This is a charity that operates in the Newham Borough area, trying to feed families that have fallen on stony ground. So if you would see your way clear to putting a few quid in the pot, no donation is too small. Give generously. We thank you very much indeed for your support. Talking of support, please don't forget to like, comment on, and share the stream to your social media platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Make sure you hit that bell icon. You'll be notified of any new content as and when we upload it to the channel. Thank you very much for your support. And Gio, we're just going to finish with, what are we, my friend?
Relatively large.
That'll do me. Come on, you Irons.
Hello, boys and girls. It's Zippy here. I'd like to thank Gio for coming on the channel. Yes, but what's the difference between Scotland at the World Cup and a tea bag? A tea bag's going to stay in the cup longer.